The rain had just begun to fall in thin silver threads, glistening beneath the streetlights of the city. Cars splashed by, horns blaring in frustration as traffic thickened. Among the rushing footsteps and umbrellas tilting against the storm, one man walked slowly, his expensive suit damp, his polished shoes stained by puddles. Daniel Carter was his name, a man who had built a life of wealth, prestige, and control, yet who carried an emptiness that no luxury car, no penthouse view, no victory in court could ever cure. He was 45 years old and, to anyone looking, from the outside, he was the embodiment of success. He had fought his way up from obscurity, mastering the ruthless arena of law until his name was printed in magazines and whispered in boardrooms. But none of that mattered when the elevator doors opened each night and silence greeted him. His home, though elegant and towering over the city skyline, felt more like a museum, shiny, beautiful, and lifeless. Daniel never admitted it aloud, not even to himself, but loneliness gnawed at him. Sometimes he would pause at the dining table, staring at the empty chair across from his, imagining laughter, a soft voice, maybe even the chaos of children. But imagination was all he had, and the silence always returned to smother him. That night, after hours of arguments in a courtroom that left him weary, he decided not to call for his driver. Instead, he let the city swallow him, its wet pavements, and neon lights a distraction from the constant ringing in his head. The drizzle had turned heavier, soaking through his jacket, but he welcomed it. At least the rain felt real, something money couldn't buy. He was halfway down a narrow street when he heard it. A voice, soft, hesitant, almost too small to exist. Amid the rush of the city, "Excuse me, sir, could you help me?" Daniel turned, unsure if he had imagined it. Standing near the edge of a lamppost's glow was a little girl, no older than 7. Her clothes were thin, her shoes worn, her dark hair clinging damp to her face. In her arms she clutched a bundle wrapped in a fraying blanket. From within, a faint whimper stirred a baby's cry. For a moment, Daniel froze. He had walked past dozens of beggars in his life, never stopping, always convincing himself that someone else would help, that it wasn't his responsibility. But something about this child rooted him in place. Her eyes, large, desperate yet filled with a kind of quiet strength, met his, and he felt an odd pull, as if those eyes saw past the polished attorney and into the lonely boy he once had been. "What is it you need?" Daniel asked, his voice softer than he intended. The girl held the bundle closer, her thin arms trembling. "I just need some milk for my baby brother," she whispered. "He's hungry. My mom, she's sick and can't go out." Daniel looked around. People hurried past, umbrellas tilted, collars up, eyes fixed ahead. Not a single one slowed, not a single glance spared for the child. It was as though she was invisible, a ghost lost in the noise of the city. But she wasn't invisible to him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied quietly. She lowered her gaze for a moment, then added, "This is Ethan." She tilted the blanket slightly, and Daniel caught sight of the tiny face nestled inside. Pale, fragile, with lips quivering against the cold, something stirred in him, an echo of memory he had tried for years to bury. He saw himself as a boy again, knocking on doors, asking neighbors for bread because his father had spent everything on himself. He remembered the humiliation of rejection, the way his small fists had clenched as he swore he would never need to beg again. And now, here was this girl, standing with the same courage and the same quiet pain he once knew. Daniel swallowed hard. "Come with me," he said. Lily blinked, surprised. "To where?" "To get milk," he answered simply. Her eyes lit up just slightly, though still guarded, as if afraid to hope too much. She nodded, and together they walked to a corner, store glowing in the rain. Inside, the warmth of fluorescent lights and the faint smell of bread wrapped around them. Daniel moved quickly through the aisles, placing a container of formula into the basket, then pausing. He added bread, fruit, a carton of eggs, even diapers. Lily followed silently, watching in awe as the basket filled. "That's too much," she finally whispered. "I only asked for milk." Daniel looked at her and, for the first time in years, a genuine smile touched his lips. "Think of it as an early repayment," he said. One day, you'll return it in your own way. Her small mouth curved into a shy smile, a smile that carried more warmth than any courtroom victory had ever given him. She hugged the bundle in her arms tighter, and Daniel felt something shift inside him. At the counter, the clerk gave him a curious look, as though wondering why a man in a tailored suit was buying such humble items. But Daniel ignored it, paying without hesitation. When they stepped back into the rain, Lily looked up at him. "Do you really think I can repay you one day?" she asked softly. "I believe you will," Daniel replied. Though even he wasn't sure why he felt so certain, the rain had slowed, leaving the city streets shimmering under the glow of lights. For the first time in years, Daniel felt less alone. He had no idea that this simple act, buying milk for a stranger, was only the beginning of a journey that would shatter the walls around his heart and change the course of his life forever. As Lily clutched the bag of groceries, her eyes shone not just with gratitude, but with a spark of determination. Daniel didn't know it yet, but that spark would lead them both into a story neither of them could have imagined, a story of promises, resilience, and the power of kindness to heal even the deepest wounds. And in that fleeting moment, standing in the glow of the streetlight, Daniel Carter, who had once believed his life was nothing more than empty victories, felt the faint stirrings of something he had long forgotten: hope. The following morning, Daniel woke earlier than usual. The city skyline stretched out before him through the glass walls of his apartment, glowing faintly as dawn crept over the horizon. Normally, his mornings were mechanical: coffee, the news, a glance at his phone filled with unread emails, then straight into another day of battles and negotiations. But today was different. The memory of the little girl standing in the rain lingered in his mind like an unfinished sentence. He could still hear her soft voice. "Do you really think I can repay you someday?" It played in his head, haunting him with a strange sense of responsibility. It wasn't the groceries or the money that troubled him. He had given away far greater sums without a second thought. It was the eyes, the fragile, determined eyes of a child who should have been carefree yet carried the burdens of an adult. Daniel tried to shake it off, diving into work. His office was filled with papers, assistants buzzing in and out, phones ringing endlessly. He argued cases, signed contracts, and gave orders as he always did. Yet every time his mind wandered, it returned to the rain, the bundle in Lily's arms, and the small smile she had given him outside the store. For the first time in years, the victories of the day felt hollow. When evening came, instead of going home, Daniel found himself walking toward the same street corner where he had met her. The rain had stopped, but the air was cool, filled with the hum of traffic. He told himself it was coincidence, that he just needed air. But deep down he knew the truth. He was looking for her, and there she was. Lily sat on the steps of a narrow building, her arms wrapped tightly around Ethan. The baby stirred weakly, letting out soft cries that cut through the city noise. Her clothes were no better than the night before, her hair still tangled, yet her back was straight, her face steady as if she refused to bow to despair. Daniel hesitated, then approached Lily. He said gently, her head lifted, and for a split second, her eyes widened with recognition. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "You came back." Something in those words pierced him deeper than any courtroom attack ever had. She hadn't asked him why he returned, nor did she seem surprised. She said it like she had expected it, like she believed in him in a way he didn't even believe in himself. Daniel sat beside her, his expensive suit brushing against the cracked stone steps. "How is your brother?" "He's hungry again," Lily admitted softly, glancing down at Ethan. "The milk you bought helped last night, but babies, they always need more." She giggled faintly, though it quickly faded. "Sometimes I pretend I'm full so Mom doesn't worry, but I get really hungry too." Her words tightened something in his chest. He had sat in luxurious restaurants, leaving meals unfinished because he wasn't hungry, while this child was pretending to be full just to ease her mother's pain. "Where's your mom now?" he asked. "She's upstairs," Lily pointed toward the dim building behind them. "She's sick. Some days she can't get out of bed." Daniel studied the worn building, its bricks chipped, its windows clouded. He wondered how many other Stories like Lily's were tucked away inside its walls, hidden from the bustling streets just a block away. Would it be all right if I met her? He asked carefully. Lily hesitated, clutching Ethan closer. She doesn't like strangers. But you don't feel like a stranger. The innocence of the statement caught him off guard. He had spent his adult life being guarded, distrusted, and feared in courtrooms. Yet here was a child telling him he wasn't a stranger after meeting him only once. Only if she's comfortable, Daniel assured. For now, let me help you get more food. They walked together to the store again, and just like the night before, Daniel filled a basket this time with more variety. He added baby formula, cereal, pasta, canned goods, and even a small packet of cookies. Lily's eyes lingered on the cookies, wide and uncertain. You like these? Daniel asked, noticing. She looked down quickly. Embarrassed. I used to, but they're too expensive now. Daniel placed the packs in the basket without another word. Back outside, Lily clutched the bag of groceries as though it were treasure. She turned to him, her face serious despite her age. Why are you helping us? The question struck him harder than expected. Why was he helping? He could have easily walked away that first night, as he had done countless times before. But something about Lily made it impossible. Maybe it was her resilience. Maybe it was the memory of his own childhood hunger. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, helping someone made him feel human again. Because once, when I was younger, I needed help too, Daniel said quietly, and someone was kind to me. I never forgot it. Her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly, as if she understood more than a child should. They reached her building, and before disappearing inside, Lily turned back. Thank you, Daniel. Someday, I'll pay you back. I promise. The words echoed in his mind long after she vanished upstairs. That night, lying in his penthouse with the city lights sprawling beneath him, Daniel replayed the moment again and again. A girl with nothing had made a promise with more sincerity than all the clients and partners he had ever known. The next day, he found himself distracted once more. The courtroom felt like a stage he no longer wished to perform on. Every polished sentence, every triumphant ruling felt shallow compared to a child's promise whispered in the dark. As days turned into weeks, Daniel began to see Lily more often. Sometimes he brought groceries, other times small things, medicine, a warm blanket, even books for her to read. She never begged, never demanded, always accepted with gratitude and always repeated the same words, I'll pay you back one day. Daniel didn't know it then, but each visit was reshaping him. His life of solitude, once filled only with empty victories, was slowly being invaded by something far stronger than ambition, connection. But as every story of hope teaches, light often attracts shadows, and Daniel's growing attachment to Lily and her family was about to draw him into challenges he had never prepared for, challenges that would test not just his wealth, but the depths of his heart. The night was quiet, but Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in his apartment, the city glowing beneath him, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face, that unwavering little smile, her promise to repay him one day, and the fragile sound of Ethan's cries. Something about them had stirred an ache in his heart that he couldn't push away for days. He told himself he was only helping because it was the right thing to do, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Lily and Ethan had cracked open something inside him, something he thought had long since died, a need to care, to be needed, to belong. He hadn't realized how hollow his life was until the moment he looked into the eyes of a child who carried hope despite having so little. The following evening, he returned to their building. The narrow hallway smelled faintly of damp wood and dust, with peeling paint curling off the walls. He climbed the creaky staircase, his footsteps echoing softly. When he reached the door Lily had pointed out days before, he hesitated. He had spent years in courtrooms, unafraid of judgment or confrontation. Yet now, standing before a weathered door in a forgotten building, he felt nervous. Before he could knock, the door opened. A frail woman stood there, her frame thin, her face pale. Her dark hair, though messy, carried traces of beauty that illness had not yet stolen. She held onto the doorframe as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak but sharp with suspicion. Daniel straightened. "My name is Daniel Carter. I've been helping your daughter with food." Her eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe, his tailored coat, his polished shoes. They didn't belong in a place like this. "Why?" she asked simply. He hesitated, then said honestly, "Because I could. Because I saw her standing in the rain with her brother, and I couldn't walk away." A silence hung between them, broken only by Ethan's soft cries from inside. Finally, the woman stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, the wallpaper peeled in long strips, and the furniture looked worn from years of use. Yet despite the poverty, it was tidy. Lily sat on the floor with Ethan, trying to soothe him with a lullaby that cracked slightly in her young voice. When she saw Daniel, her face lit up. "You came again," she exclaimed, rushing to her feet. Her mother watched closely, still cautious. "I'm Angela," she introduced after a pause. "Lily tells me you've been helping. I appreciate it, but I don't want charity. We'll manage." Daniel looked at her, noting the tired lines etched into her face. He recognized pride when he saw it. He had once worn the same mask. "It's not charity," he said gently. "Think of it as an investment. Your daughter already promised me she'll repay me one day." Angela's lips curved faintly, though her eyes betrayed doubt. "She says that a lot," she murmured. Daniel stayed for a while, watching Lily feed Ethan from the formula he had brought the night before. The baby drank hungrily, his tiny hands clutching the bottle, and Daniel felt a strange warmth watching them. It was a simple moment, but it carried a weight more profound than any courtroom victory. When he finally left, Angela's parting words echoed in his ears. "People don't help without wanting something in return. Be careful what you expect." He walked home with those words gnawing at him. Did he expect something? He had no clear answer. All he knew was that something about this family made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in decades. But soon, the world began to notice. One afternoon, as Daniel left the grocery store with another bag of supplies, a colleague spotted him. "Daniel Carter," the man asked, stunned. "You, carrying groceries?" He laughed. "What's next?" "Cooking your own dinner." Daniel forced a smile and brushed it off, but whispers spread quickly. In his world, reputation was everything. A powerful attorney seen frequenting rundown neighborhoods with a single mother, and her children was unusual, and unusual quickly turned into suspicious. The following week, a senior partner at his firm called him in. "Daniel, we've heard things. People are saying you've been spending time in places that don't align with the image of this firm. Is there something we should know?" Daniel stared at the man across the table, remembering the dim apartment, Lily's laughter, Ethan's small hands. For the first time, the thought of losing his reputation didn't scare him. What scared him was the idea of turning his back on them. "It's personal," Daniel replied firmly, "and it stays that way." The partner frowned, but said nothing more. Meanwhile, Lily grew more attached to him with each passing day. Whenever Daniel appeared at the building, she would rush down the stairs, her face lighting up with unguarded joy. She began sharing little stories about her school, her dreams, even silly jokes she had made up. For Daniel, it was like rediscovering a part of himself he had forgotten, the simple joy of being part of someone's everyday life. But one evening, when he arrived, he found Lily sitting on the steps, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Ethan was nowhere in sight. "What happened?" Daniel asked quickly, his heart lurching. "It's Mom," Lily whispered. "She collapsed. They took her to the hospital. I don't know what to do." The fear in her voice sliced through him. Without thinking, he knelt beside her. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "You're not alone in this." Her small hands clung to his sleeve as though it was the only thing keeping her from drowning. In that moment, Daniel realized the truth. This wasn't about helping out of kindness anymore. This was about family, the kind he never had, but had suddenly been given. And as the city lights flickered on around them, Daniel made a silent vow. Whatever it took, he would stand by them. He didn't know how deep this journey would go or how much it would cost him, but he knew one thing for certain. He could never walk away again. The sharp white lights of the hospital corridor buzzed faintly, echoing against the tiled floor as Daniel paced back and forth. He had rushed Lily and Ethan there in his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than he had ever gripped. A pen in court, the image of Angela collapsing wouldn't leave his mind, for all the power and wealth he had gathered. Standing in that emergency room made him feel powerless. Lily sat nearby in a plastic chair, her small arms wrapped around Ethan, who whimpered softly against her shoulder. Her feet dangled above the floor, swinging nervously as she clung to her brother. She looked so small against the vast emptiness of the waiting area, and yet the strength in her posture was undeniable. Daniel had seen grown men break under less, but this little girl sat there holding her family together. When the doctor finally appeared, Lily jumped up. "Is my mom okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. The doctor glanced at Daniel, then back at Lily. His tone was gentle, but clinical. "Your mother is very weak. She has been ignoring her health for a long time. Severe pneumonia, compounded by exhaustion and malnutrition. We've admitted her, but she'll need time and proper care." Lily's lip quivered. She hugged Ethan closer. "Can I see her?" "Not yet," the doctor replied softly. "She needs rest." Daniel stepped forward. "Do whatever it takes. Don't worry about expenses. I'll handle it." The doctor nodded, then hurried away. Lily turned to Daniel, her eyes wide. "You'll really help her, even the hospital?" He knelt down so his eyes were level with hers. "Yes, I promise." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she whispered, "Then you're not just helping me anymore. You're saving us." The words sank deep into him, heavy and humbling. He had always been the one people came to, for contracts, for arguments, for power. But never before had someone looked at him as if he were their lifeline. Hours later, Daniel sat with Lily in the hospital cafeteria, a forgotten cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. Lily nibbled on a sandwich he had bought her, though most of her attention stayed on Ethan, who slept in her lap. Her eyelids drooped, but she forced herself to stay awake. "You should rest," Daniel said gently. She shook her head stubbornly. "What if Mom wakes up and I'm not there?" He admired her determination, but it broke his heart too. "You're carrying too much, Lily. You're a child. You shouldn't have to worry like this." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with quiet defiance. "If I don't worry, who will? Mom needs me. Ethan needs me. I can't let them down." Her words cut deep. Daniel recognized the burden of responsibility far too young. It was the same burden he had carried once. He reached across the table, resting a hand lightly over hers. "You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm here." That night, Daniel didn't return to his penthouse. He stayed in the hospital, dozing lightly in a stiff chair, waking whenever Lily stirred. The world outside continued as always. Lawyers argued in courtrooms. Deals were signed in offices, but Daniel's world had shifted. Success no longer looked like a headline. Success was making sure this little girl didn't lose the only parent she had left. Days passed, blurring into one another. Daniel became a constant presence, bringing meals, speaking with doctors, making sure the bills were covered. He watched Lily take her school books to the hospital room, reading aloud to her mother even when Angela was too weak to respond. Sometimes, Angela opened her eyes long enough to look at Daniel with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion, as though still unsure why he had entered their lives. One evening, when Lily had finally fallen asleep in the chair beside her mother's bed, Angela motioned weakly for Daniel to come closer. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "We're strangers to you. Why carry our burden?" Daniel hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because once someone carried mine, and I never forgot. Maybe this is my chance to pass it on." Angela studied him, her tired eyes softening. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into. We're not easy people to save." "I'm not here to save," he replied quietly. "I'm here to stand beside." Her eyes fluttered shut again, but for the first time since they met, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Not everyone, however, saw Daniel's actions with kindness. At work, murmurs grew louder. His colleagues whispered about his absences, his distractions, his strange preoccupation with a family no one knew. For a man whose reputation had been built on precision and control, His sudden unpredictability unsettled them. Some called it weakness, others called it scandal. But Daniel didn't care. One night, as he left the hospital to fetch more supplies, Lily ran after him. "Daniel," she called. He turned, startled, as she skidded to a stop, her face flushed with urgency. "I don't know how to say this, but I believe you were meant to find us. I prayed someone would come, and then you did." He swallowed hard, caught off guard by the faith in her voice. No one had ever said such words to him. People praised his skill, his victories, his wealth, but no one had ever told him he was an answer to a prayer. "Then I'll do my best not to let you down," he said softly. Lily smiled, clutching the hem of her worn sweater. "You won't. I just know it." As she hurried back to the ward, Daniel stood still for a long moment, staring at the dim hospital windows glowing against the night. A thought rose in him, unfamiliar, yet undeniable. For the first time in decades, he wasn't living for himself anymore. And though he didn't yet realize it, his choice to stay by their side would soon draw him into battles far more personal, far more dangerous than any he had ever faced in court. Battles where money, power, and reputation wouldn't be enough. The storm finally broke over the city one evening, rain hammering the windows of Daniel's office as he stood staring out at the skyline. He had stayed late, though his thoughts weren't on the case files scattered across his desk. They were on the hospital, on Lily's determined little face, on Angela's weary eyes, on the fragile way Ethan's chest rose and fell when he slept. The sound of thunder rolled, and in that moment Daniel realized something unsettling. His world of courtrooms and contracts felt further away than ever before. The knock on his door was sharp. Without waiting, the managing partner of the firm stepped inside, a man with silver hair and a permanent air of disapproval. He shut the door behind him. "Daniel," he said, voice clipped, "we need to talk." Daniel turned, bracing himself. "I don't know what you're caught up in," the man continued, "but you're distracted. You've missed meetings, postponed hearings, and the board is concerned. Word is spreading about you spending time in questionable neighborhoods with people who have no connection to our world. Do you have any idea what that looks like?" Daniel felt the weight of the accusation, but for once he didn't flinch. "I know exactly what it looks like," he replied calmly. "It looks like me being human." The man's eyes narrowed. "Our clients don't want human. They want precision, control, reputation. If you can't separate your personal life from your work, you're jeopardizing everything you built." Daniel said nothing, only stared at the storm outside. He had spent decades clawing his way to the top, sacrificing friendships, relationships, even peace of mind. And now, faced with the choice, he found that none of it seemed as valuable as the promise of a little girl who believed in him. The partner leaned closer, voice sharp. "Decide quickly, Daniel. Either you come back to who you were or you walk away from this firm." After he left, the silence pressed heavily against Daniel. The ultimatum echoed in his head, but when he pictured Lily, alone in the hospital corridor, whispering that he was her answer to a prayer, the choice became clear. That night, instead of drafting closing arguments, Daniel found himself back at the hospital. Angela was resting, her breathing shallow but steadier than before. Lily sat by her side, humming softly to Ethan. When she saw him, her face lit up in relief. "You came," she said simply. "I'll always come," Daniel replied, lowering himself into the chair beside her. The days turned into weeks. Angela slowly improved, though recovery was slow. Daniel continued to juggle his cases and his visits, but the balance grew harder. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Some colleagues accused him of scandal. Others hinted at ulterior motives. To them, a man of his stature helping a struggling family made no sense unless something dark was hidden beneath. One afternoon, as Daniel entered the hospital lobby, he was stopped by a familiar voice. "Mr. Carter." A woman in a sharp suit stood waiting. She introduced herself as a caseworker from Child Services. "We've received reports about this family. Concerns about the mother's ability to care for her children." Daniel stiffened. "Concerns from who?" "I can't disclose that," she replied evenly. "But with her illness and financial state, it raises questions. If things don't improve, custody could be at risk." The words struck like a blade. He imagined Lily being taken from her mother, Ethan placed in a system that saw them as files rather than souls. The thought was unbearable. They're not neglected, Daniel said firmly. They're loved. The mother is ill, but she's fighting, and they're not alone anymore. The caseworker studied him, clearly skeptical. And what's your connection to them? Daniel met her gaze without wavering. I'm a friend, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they're safe. She gave a polite nod, but her eyes lingered on him with suspicion. As she left, Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He had built an empire on logic and law, but now he was facing a battle where rules wouldn't protect the innocent. Later that night, sitting by Angela's bedside, he told her about the visit. Her face paled. They'll take my children, she whispered, panic in her voice. Not if I can help it. Daniel promised, you're not alone anymore. We'll fight this together. Angela's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly blinked them away. For the first time, she reached for his hand. I don't understand you, she murmured. Men like you don't look twice at women like me. But you've been here. You've seen us. Why? Daniel thought of all the empty nights in his penthouse, the hollow victories, the silence that had nearly drowned him. Because you remind me what life is supposed to be, he said softly. Real, messy, full of love, even in the hardest places. Angela's hand trembled, but she didn't pull away. For a long moment, they sat in silence, bound by a fragile trust neither expected. But outside that hospital room, forces were already moving. Reports, suspicions, and whispers gathered. Like dark clouds, Daniel's world and theirs were colliding. And soon he would have to make a choice that could cost him everything he thought he valued, or give him something worth more than he had ever dreamed. And as Lily curled up beside Ethan that night, whispering her promise once again, I'll pay you back someday. I swear, Daniel realized he wasn't waiting for repayment anymore. He was waiting for the chance to prove, once and for all, that love and loyalty meant more than reputation or wealth. What he didn't know was how far others would go to test that belief. The courtroom was silent, except for the steady tick of the clock on the wall. Daniel stood at the center, not as an attorney representing a client, but as a man standing between a family and the system that threatened to tear them apart. He had defended CEOs, politicians, and corporations with fortunes at stake, but never had a case felt as heavy as this. Because this time, it wasn't about contracts or money, it was about Lily, Ethan, and Angela. Across the aisle sat a representative from Child Services, her stack of reports painting a bleak picture of neglect and instability. In cold, typed words, Angela was portrayed as unfit, the apartment unlivable, the children at risk. To the system, they were data points. To Daniel, they were his family. Mr. Carter, the judge began, you're a respected attorney, but this is highly irregular. Why are you personally involved? Daniel looked at the judge, his voice steady though his heart pounded. Because I met a little girl in the rain, holding her baby brother, asking only for milk, not money, not favors, just milk. She made me a promise that one day she'd repay me, and I believed her. I still do. That child has more strength and integrity than many adults I've seen in my years of law. If you take her from her mother, you won't just be breaking up a family, you'll be breaking the spirit of a little girl who's already carrying more than most. The room was still. Even the caseworker shifted uncomfortably under the weight of his words. Angela sat at the table, pale and fragile, but with her head held high. Lily sat beside her, holding Ethan in her lap, her small frame trembling with the enormity of the moment. Her eyes never left Daniel, as though clinging to him with silent faith. Daniel continued, his voice gaining strength. I've been in their home. I've seen how little they have, but I've also seen how much love binds them together. That love cannot be measured in reports or statistics. Yes, they need help. Yes, they're struggling. But separating them will destroy what little stability they do have. What they need isn't separation, it's support, and I am willing to provide it. The judge leaned back, studying him. Support, Mr. Carter, in what capacity? In every capacity I can, Daniel said firmly. Financially, emotionally, legally. I'll stand as their guardian if I must, but I will not stand by and let this family be broken apart. The judge regarded him silently for a long time. Finally, he said, "This isn't typical. But given your standing and your testimony, the court will grant temporary guardianship oversight rather than removal. Child services will monitor progress, but the children will remain with their mother." A hush fell. Lily's eyes widened, her lips parting as though she couldn't believe what she had heard. Then, in a rush, she turned to her mother and hugged her tightly. Ethan squealing at the sudden movement, Angela's tears flowed freely, her pride dissolving under the weight of relief. Daniel exhaled slowly, realizing only then how tightly he had been holding his breath. He had fought hundreds of cases, but this felt like the first real victory of his life. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Questions flew. Why was a man of Daniel Carter's reputation personally involved in a struggling family's case? Was it scandal? Was it charity? Was it something else? For the first time, Daniel didn't deflect. He looked into the cameras and spoke from the heart. "I spent years believing success was about winning cases and earning wealth," he said. "But real success is measured in the lives we touch, the people we stand for when no one else will. If you want to know why I'm here, it's simple. I was asked for milk, and I realized I'd been starving too, not for food, but for purpose, and I found it in them." The story spread quickly, far beyond the courthouse. Some mocked him, but many more were moved. Strangers sent donations, offers of help, and messages of support. For once, Daniel didn't care about the criticism. All he cared about was the sight of Lily skipping beside him on the courthouse steps, her hand gripping his tightly, her eyes shining with a confidence that hadn't been there before. That evening, back at their small apartment, the mood was different. The walls were still worn, the furniture still old, but the air carried something new: hope. Angela sat on the couch, Ethan sleeping peacefully in her arms, while Lily bounded around the room with excitement. "Did you hear him, Mom?" Lily said, beaming. "He said we get to stay together. We won." Angela smiled weakly, her eyes resting on Daniel. "We didn't win because of me," she said softly. "We won because of him." Lily turned to Daniel, her smile fading into something more serious. "I told you I'd pay you back one day," she whispered. Daniel knelt so he was eye level with her. "And you already have, Lily." She frowned. "But how? I don't have anything to give." "Yes, you do," Daniel said gently. "You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. You gave me a reason to believe again." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment she threw her arms around his neck, holding him with all the strength her small body could muster. Daniel closed his eyes, the weight of her embrace melting away years of emptiness. From that night on, life didn't magically become easy. Angela's recovery was slow, money remained tight, and challenges continued, but they weren't facing them alone anymore. Daniel kept his promise. He stood beside them, not above them, not as a savior, but as part of their family. Years later, when Lily stood tall in her graduation gown, she searched the crowd until she saw Daniel clapping with quiet pride. After the ceremony, she ran to him, her eyes bright with tears. "Do you remember the first night we met?" she asked. "How could I forget?" He replied, smiling. "I promised I'd pay you back one day," she said. "Today, I think I finally did. I made it because you believed in me." Daniel shook his head, his throat tight with emotion. "No, Lily, I made it because you believed in me first." And as she hugged him once more, Daniel realized the truth. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest promises, and sometimes a request as simple as milk can change a life forever.